Alright, today we are going to be talking about cat DPS. I'm going to be covering it mainly from the perspective of a bear tank that is DPSing as a cat in their quote-unquote off-spec, though it is a huge function of your main spec, technically. But it should be useful information for anybody looking to DPS as a feral cat. Just note that there is no bear tank specialization. If you're feral, you're both a cat and a bear in the Burning Crusade expansion. The spec is the exact same, and most of the value, other than the incredible scaling that the druid offers, is in their versatility. It's an incredibly flexible class that can do way more DPS as cat than either the other tank options, those being paladin and warrior, can do when they're not actively tanking a mob. So part of the huge value of the druid is mastering this exact thing and being able to whip into cat form at any time and pump out much better DPS than they could. As a bear tank, which is the focus of this guide, you will want to pick up pieces that are functionally more DPS pieces. A fine example is, we'll say, this Corona Signet Ring. It is technically your off-spec, in quotes, depending on how your raid wants to handle that, but if you're an off-tank in some of these raids, you're going to be in cat form about 50% of the time. If you're the third tank, you have a paladin and a warrior, and you're the third tank simply because you have the flexibility that they don't, you're in cat form maybe 70% of the time on some of this stuff. So mastering this and getting the appropriate pieces is a huge function of your main spec, and you should argue for that in your raids. So what you're aiming at specifically, though, as the bear tank looking to do cat DPS as a function of your main spec when you're not needed, is items like this that provide benefit both in cat form massively. You need all of these stats, which we'll cover in just a moment, but also things that splash in as excellent substitute threat pieces as you outscale content, like if you're in Phase 2 raids running Tier 5 content, but you're bouncing back to Karazhan, you can probably swap in a few of these cat DPS pieces because you're not taking the same damage you would in pre-bis gear. Before, in your first run through Karazhan in greens and blues, you're not there anymore, most likely, if you have especially like a bunch of tier pieces and whatnot. Items like this can be swapped in for some of those rings, because you're not going to die, but you do want the increased threat and damage output to speed up your raids, and to hold threat on your DPS, which might be pumping now as they go back to Karazhan. So your specific focus as a bear tank, off-specking, or swapping to cat form, the pieces you're looking for your cat form are like this. Things that are very useful as a bear, but also swapping to cat are excellent as well, and you'll use more and more of these splashed into your tank sets as you outgear content. As far as your stats are concerned, what you're looking for the base stats, the two that are most interesting to you are strength and agility. Agility is king because it gives you both attack power, and it gives you quite a bit because of the way that you can see cat form increases melee attack power by 140 plus agility, and agility is scaling your attack power on its own. So as a function of cat form, you're getting a ton of extra attack power from agility, plus critical hit chance. And that crit chance is huge because of a talent, which we will cover here, that gives you extra combo points when you hit critical strikes. So agility is just an absolutely super premium stat. However, don't sleep on strength. There's a reason it's splashed in on all of the tier pieces, and there's a reason that I'm mentioning it here and giving it a special mention, if you will, because it gives, if you look at that, two attack power per point of strength that you're getting from gear, which is huge. It's a ton of extra attack power, and you only are stacking the other stats so far. If you lack the punch from having the attack power, extra crit is only so valuable. So you want a healthy balance so that when you hit, you're hitting hard, and then the agility you want, because it both helps you hit harder and it helps you crit more. It just gives less attack power per point than strength. So you want a nice blend of both, but agility is by far your most valuable base stat. In terms of non-base stats, but critical melee stats, you're looking first to get a good chunk of expertise. It's not really super reasonable to think you can cap it, but items like the ring from Lower City that give, I think, 25 expertise. There's a set of gloves that drops in Karazhan, the belt off Lady Bash and SSC if your guild is killing that. There's a bunch of items that give expertise, and it's an amazing stat. It's arguably more valuable than hit as you get your first points of expertise. There's a cap where it becomes less useful, but in terms of just baseline stats, expertise is excellent and you want a good chunk of it. Hit rating, you're aiming for 9%. Keep in mind that a Boomkin's improved Fairy Fire, which they should definitely have spec'd. If that is up on the mobs, that's an extra 3% hit. I think the Shamans are going to give you 1% hit if you're in a group with them, so keep these things in mind as you build your gear sets, but really be as self-sufficient on hit rating as you can, just in case somebody misses a raid night. Maybe have some extra hit rating to splash in, but make sure that you have enough. Hit rating is absolutely critical, and from there you're looking to get as much attack power and crit as you possibly can muster. Special mention though, when you're building out your gear sets, is this bad boy right here, the Wolf's Head Helm. It is fairly unassuming, but if you know anything about druids, you've probably seen this before. The reason that this is so useful, although this might be redundant information for some, is because of the way that the ability, when you shift into cat form you gain 20 energy, stacks up nicely with this Führer talent, which gives 40 energy when you shift into cat form, which means that if I drop cat form and pop back into cat form, boom, I start at 60 energy and it immediately ticked up to 80, just because of where I was at in my energy cycle. But it allows you to swap into cat form with a nice chunk of energy to start, and that resource is more valuable to you than essentially any stats that you could possibly have in that headpiece. Although some argue there might be a balance in Sunwell Plateau where you tip over the edge where it's more valuable, but really plan to be using this Wolf's Head Helm through the entirety of the Burning Crusade. What it does for your rotation, which we will get into, is more valuable than any stats you could have on this individual piece of gear. The huge lulls in your energy ticks without what's called power shifting, which we'll get into in a moment, without this item are too critical. I mean, it's hugely costly to not be power shifting, and this helm gives you, in tandem with the Führer talent, enough energy to spam your shred ability aggressively for tons of combo points, constant rips at max combo points up on your target, and shredding and your yellow abilities are going to be a massive percentage of your damage. So critical, in fact, that without power shifting, you cut your DPS by over half of what it should be. Quick run over the talent tree. We're going to start in Feral Combat here. I'm going to quick run through it because you can just pause and copy. This is a cookie cutter spec that pretty much no PvE build is going to deviate from. Ferocity reduces the energy cost of a bunch of your abilities. This is going to increase your threat and bear form, since you are, presumably from the perspective of this guide, a feral druid in a raid looking to do both bear and cat. The reduced chance to detect while prowling is great. Increased armor from items is great for the bear. Movement speed outside, not super usable, but we're picking it up because it's useful, and the 4% dodge in bear form is huge. Feral charge because it's very useful as a bear. Critical hit chance in bear and cat form by 6% is enormous, and this is the combo point generator here. When you crit, you get an additional combo point when you critically strike, which is absolutely incredible. Part of the reason that we're stacking so much agility. Huge bonus to attack power. Reduces the energy cost of your shred, which is going to be your main damaging ability. This is going to increase the damage caused by mangle, which is in your cat rotation, as well as claw and rake, which are not. Actually, you can pretty much take those off of your bar. The Fairy Fire Feral is going to be important, mainly for bear pulls. but in cat form it will be useful to keep this up on your target, especially if you don't have a boomkin with improved fairy fire up on the target. You want this debuff on the target from somebody at all times, and it might end up being you, so you do need this, and you will need it to pull in bear form. This is a huge increase to your stats. You absolutely need this. 10% attack power in cat is ridiculous. 20% stamina in bear is ridiculous. This is essentially 3% additional stats. Don't sleep on this. Stack and base stats is huge with Blessing of Kings available to both factions in this expansion. Plus the 3% reduced critical hit chance for mobs against you is huge as a bear for your gear set stacking, but that'll be for a different video. Leader of the pack, this is why everybody, like hunters, want to be in the druid's party. When you're in a form, you're producing this 5% crit chance for ranged and melee attacks. That's a humongous damage buff to physical damage entities in the party with you. We're taking this, damage from melee critical strikes by 10%. That's another reason to stack up those crits and get a ton of them. You get an extra damage bonus from critical hits. Mangle is a huge debuff, new to this expansion, and a great filler for your rotation in bear form. In cat form, it's a debuff that you just want to keep up on the target. If you have a bear tank, you don't really have to use Mangle because they should keep it up on the target at all times. But you must, like Fairy Fire, keep these debuffs on the target at all times to maximize your DPS, mainly because Shred is increasing by 20%. Sorry, yeah, 30% additional damage from Shred and Bleeds, which are both a huge component in Shred and Rip in your DPS rotation. It's essentially your entire DPS rotation is increased by 30% when this debuff is up. So if the bear isn't tanking and applying this buff, you need to be working this into your rotation to keep it up at all times. Oh, sorry. The rest of the tree is restoration. Again, very cookie cutter. You don't need to deviate from this. This is imperative for power shifting. This is 10% increased physical damage. I don't have to explain why that's good. You're all physical damage. Reduces the cost of shapeshifting. This is actually huge for power shifting, which we'll get into in just a second. This is more useful for bear, really. It's 10 additional rage when you use Enrage. You can ignore that, but you do want it. And 30% mana regen while casting is pretty big because it allows your your mana to tick up while you are power shifting, which is more important than you might think because mana is a limitation to your DPS. Omen of Clarity is huge. It's free abilities in cat form, which will save you energy, which allows you to pump more shreds into the boss, essentially, which is the bulk of your DPS. Now, in terms of power shifting, I've kind of explained it already, but there's a lot of nuance to it. You will want something, let me see what mine is called. Nug Combo Bar and Nug Energy are the add-ons that I'm using, and you will see here when we do a little demonstration. But you want something to track your energy very cleanly and visually right here, because your whole rotation revolves around your energy bar and when it's going to tick. So, to summarize it very briefly, your objective is to do something called power shifting, which is through the use of a macro. It's a very simple macro here. It's just /cast !cat form. And this will, I'll demonstrate it really quick. This will shift you out of and back into cat form in a single global instant. So it does trigger the global cooldown, but it's an instantaneous thing. You saw the puff of smoke there? What that does is it's going to restore when I dump all my energy before the next tick up of energy. I dump all the energy down and power shift to restore back to 60. Then the next energy tick comes through and bumps me to 80. And what that allows me to do is dump all my energy, instantly restore it. Dump all my energy, instantly restore it. Dump all my energy, you get the pattern. That allows us to generate combo points to keep max combo point rips on the target at all times, as well as rapidly get back to shredding. The worst thing you can do as a cat is have huge gaps in your cooldowns, huge gaps in your rotation where you're waiting for energy ticks that really shouldn't be happening. The huge caveat to this is that you must know, just visually as you're watching your energy bar, what the math is on the next tick and whether it will allow you to shred. You only want to be waiting on one energy tick if you're going to avoid power shifting. If it's going to take 2 energy ticks to get you to 42 energy, which is what the shred costs, then you will want to power shift to restore to 60 before that next tick up to 80. So essentially, functionally, if you want an example, when I power shift, I go to 60. You see 60. Then the tick, cool. But at 60, if I shred, I go to 18 energy. Well, 18 plus 20, which is how much you get from an energy tick, is going to be 38. That's not enough to shred, which means I need another full rotation of energy cycling to get back to the 42 for shredding, which is a huge, long, awkward pause in your DPS rotation. You would instead shred down to 18, and if you can squeeze in that puff of smoke there before the next tick, you will go to 60, then to 80 instantly, and you'll be able to start shredding immediately instead of waiting another full multiple seconds for the energy tick to start shredding again. That is the whole point of the power shifting, but you will see if I do this a few times, you're looking at my mana bar here. It is eating mana like crazy. Well, that's why we use another macro. This one is a bit longer, so I suggest you pause to review this one. So I'm not going to stop on it because I will expect you're going to pause. There's a lot going on here. Essentially what it means is if I'm low on mana, my mana pot macro, I can click it and it will restore and power shift at the same time. So I can work this in and in a single global pump my mana bar back to full essentially and power shift in the same button, which is absolutely enormous because otherwise you need to drop form, pop a potion, wait a global cooldown, then go back into form, and you've missed multiple potential energy ticks and a couple extra shreds that you could have had out by using this macro. It is absolutely critical that you use the macro that I've got here on the screen. And I think that is the full macro here because I can't scroll it. So pause it, copy this exactly. This same macro works for a healing potion, by the way. You're just swapping the name of it. I use this in bear form to do the same thing. If I'm damaged, I'm panicking, I can double click, or you should probably bind it really, I'm just a total scrub, but you should click your mana potion or use your mana potion macro, or sorry, your health potion macro, and it will power shift you in bear form, restoring a bunch of life without ever really functionally dropping your form. So the rotation is, as I stated earlier, you always want the debuffs Fairy Fire and Mangle on the target. If you have a Boomkin, which I hope your raid does because it's huge for the 3% hit from their improved Fairy Fire talent, you want Fairy Fire up on the boss. You're going to use this as you walk up to the mob. So as I'm running in to start DPSing, I'm applying Fairy Fire since it's ranged. As I get up, my first global is Mangle. As I get behind the target, I should apply the Mangle debuff to it. Unless you have a bear tank using Mangle, then you can use all of your energy, and you're so grateful for that bear for applying that debuff, because then you can use all energy on Shred, and you don't have to work Mangles into your rotation. But as long as this is up and this is up, which the Mangle one doesn't last long, so keep an eye on it, you're shredding. You're shredding up to 4 or 5 combo points, then you're using Rip. The reason it's 4 or 5 is you don't want to crit at 4 and waste an entire cycle, like an entire global cooldown and a wasted combo point from the crit. You would rather just get a 4-point Rip up, power shift, and immediately start shredding again, hopefully back up to the 5 combo points. It's close enough between 4 and 5 as far as the damage that's coming out. It's not so much damage lost that you want to wait to shred again. You'd rather have an active Rip ticking on the target to get back to shredding, which is huge. It's able to critically hit, which Rip isn't, and it generates those extra combo points for more Rips. In the occasional scenario where you go on a critting spree and your Rip is only 1/4 of the way through its duration and you've crit multiple times up to full combo points, you can drop a Ferocious Bite into the target, immediately power shift, since Ferocious Bite drains all of your energy, and get back to shred spamming to get back to max combo points before the Rip duration ends. Otherwise, it's Fairy Fire up, Mangle up, spam Shred until you're at max combo points or 4 combo points, and throw a rip on the target. And that's your whole rotation. Then you power shift when you get below the amount of energy that is 1 tick away from 42 energy for Shred. I know that that's confusing when I say it, but you'll see it in practice here when we do a little demonstration. You only ever want to be 1 energy tick away from a Shred. If you're 2 energy ticks away, which is 20 energy per cycle, you will want to power shift so that you don't wait 2 full energy ticks to do a Shred. If you want other macros and stuff, I recommend the Feral Discord. I'll try to remember to link that in the description of the video here. And keep in mind, you're not going to be the top DPS for the melee even, but you're a very reasonable DPS and you're doing a heck of a lot more damage than the other tanks when they're not actively tanking. As much as 2 to 3 times as much, depending on what kind of gear you're rocking and whether you were able to gear swap before the fight. I have a full set of gear that I run with. This is not my tank gear, by the way. Or sorry, this is not my full DPS gear, by the way. It's a bunch of tank stuff, and I don't really feel like going through and swapping it while I'm recording a video, but you're doing a lot of damage in cat form compared to the other tanks, and that's where you're valuable, not in your ability to out DPS the other classes. So I'm going to do probably a compromised rotation here, but hopefully, even with the pressure of recording a video, I'm able to execute it well enough to try and give you a demonstration. I'm not going to sit and explain it while I'm doing it. I might try to a little bit, but it's rather complicated. There's a lot of stuff to monitor. So I'm going to focus on doing the rotation, and you focus on watching the energy bar and when I power shift in relation to how much energy I have for shredding. Hopefully my friends that have been sitting here waiting, oh, yep, it looks like they are still here. Great. So I'm at full 100 energy. I should have an energy bar pop up here when I'm in combat. There you go. So Fairy Fire up. She did Mangle. So I'm going to Shred. Shred 16. I'm going to Power Shift. Shred. Shred. Put a Rip up. Power Shift. Shred. Wait for 1 tick. Shred. Power Shift. Shred. I crit. I still have some Rip left, and that's about to die, so I'm going to go ahead and drop a Ferocious Bite on it, swap targets, get the debuffs up, Power Shift, or sorry, Shred, Shred, get a Rip up. And we're just trying to pump as many shreds into this thing as we can. As they get low, and a full Rip wouldn't be able to tick down, what I am doing is I'm going to Ferocious Bite, because if the Rip isn't going to tick its full duration, then it's not worth reapplying. You'll see because of the pressure of the video, I'm even needlessly power shifting at times here. Hopefully you're functionally getting the idea here. I'm waiting 1 tick, Shred, Power Shift, Shred, and it's about to die, so I Ferocious Bite. So that's the base idea. I did screw up a little bit there because I'm trying to explain it and do it, but functionally what you can see is when I was dropping to like 17, 18 energy, I was trying to power shift. If I ever dropped to 0 energy, I was trying to power shift. Depending on what my rotation was doing, I was hitting those numbers with some frequency. And every single time I dropped to those numbers, I knew that 20 energy plus that 17 plus that 18 is not going to hit 42, so I power shift to restore energy. You can see the massive amount of mana that I drained in doing that, but you can also see that bar that was ticking up on that energy bar that pops up when I'm in combat. When it reaches the end of the cycle, that's when the next tick is going to occur, so I want to power shift before that occurs to maximize the amount of energy that I'm able to generate. Because when I power shift, if I do it after it hit the end of the bar, I'm wasting energy. Like if it would have ticked from 18 to 38, then I power shift, I've wasted a lot because now I'm technically 1 tick away from Shred. And I've triggered a global cooldown that will last until I can Shred next, or until the next energy tick. And so it's not advantageous to power shift unless you are 2 ticks away from shred and the energy bar hasn't ticked yet. I know that's a lot of convoluted information, but hopefully that does make some amount of sense. And I will have some more videos coming up soon for bear mitigation and bear threat whenever I get around to it. Thanks.